My guest today is Alan Katz, a great individual, someone that was very welcoming to me in the beginning of my career in weddings, and a great officiant, pun intended. Alan Katz of Great Officiants, here today.
My name is Brian Franklin. I am the co-founder of Vows Speeches, where we help people write and practice personalized custom vows, wedding speeches, ceremony scripts, and all of the speaking parts for any kind of event. If you or someone you know needs help with one of these things, please reach out to vowsandspeeches.com. That's VOWSAND speeches.com, or you can email me directly at Brian, BRIAN, at vowsandspeeches.com. My guest today is Alan Katz of Great Officiants. Alan is an incredibly experienced officiant. He's been doing this for many, many years. We'll have him talk about his experience. But I brought him in today, even though a lot of our clientele use friends or family, the fact is that not all of them live in Alan's district or Alan's state. And also, Alan knows what it takes to make a great ceremony, and the combination of humor and sentimentality. And everybody really enjoys it. He's got incredible reviews. You should go check him out if you're in the area. It's definitely something that you will be happy you used. But otherwise, we're going to figure out what he recommends for you. So Alan, welcome. Thank you for taking the time this morning. It's good to see you again. I see you all the time. I think we're two of the steadiest networkers in Southern California, at least, right?
Oh yeah, well, it's all about getting yourself out there, getting your face out there.
Yeah, Alan was one of the earliest people I met, and had the greatest jackets right away. It was very clear. Alan has a large array of very fun jackets in his closet.
I always akin it to, there's a book called The Purple Cow. And the basic synopsis of the story is, in a sea of brown cows, the purple cow stands out. And so I've always tried to be the purple cow.
It always works. So, Alan, I brought you in this morning, and thanks for coming again. But to you, what are the components of a bad ceremony?
Well, first off, the components of a bad ceremony is, first off, an officiant who has no clue of what they're doing, who has never done it before, who doesn't know how to use a microphone, who doesn't know how to cue the DJs, who doesn't know how to tell people to stand or sit, who doesn't step out of the frame for the kiss. That's the elements of a bad ceremony. That's why a friend or family member, is not always the greatest choice.
Well, at least they need severe guidance, right? At the minimum, they need somebody that's going to teach him those skills enough to do a great job, right?
Right, because it's not the wedding planner's responsibility to do on-the-job training. It's not the DJ's responsibility to teach them how to use a microphone. So these are things that need to be known before the ceremony happens, rather than at that moment.
Yeah, and one of the things that I talk about with my future clientele is that these are people that aren't skilled, so what are they going to do? They're going to go on the internet, and they're going to grab generic versions of ceremonies that they can then try and customize, but generally speaking will be generic. And one of the things that I know about you is that you go far and beyond in how you customize a wedding. So can you
deep dive?
Yeah,
yes.
Deep dive. So talk about your process when you're going and you meet with a couple. What are the kinds of things that you're asking them in your interview that help you get to where you need to be from a copywriting standpoint?
I think the most important things are, how'd you meet? Tell me your origin story. Where was your first date? When was the first time you said, I love you? How did you propose? And what kind of things are you geeky on? With those things, I can kind of get a sense of who they are. Those questions are the essential ones to see how playful they are. Some couples are woohoo, some couples are very down to, we don't want anything funny. We just want to, monotone ceremony. And there are those couples, and they're fine too.
Or worse, you get couples where one person is woohoo, let's go have fun, and the other one is like, I don't want that, right? And then you have to sit there and negotiate the middle ground with them,
yes.
Try to figure out
that can be the challenging part. Sometimes I think I've gotten a couple, and and I didn't,
Yeah.
And also, in addition to the couple, it's also the guests that you have to get an assessment of too. Because I can walk out there and I have this whole beautiful, fun, interactive ceremony all prepared. Hey, everybody, are you ready to see this couple get married? And they're all,
Yeah, that's a part of it that I think is challenging, especially for friends and family officiants, because part of what you're doing is crowd warm up, right? You're going out there and almost like if you're going to see a star comedian, there's always going to be 3 or 4 people before them that's going to get people just ginned up a
right,
little bit.
I'm the
Right?
opening
Yeah.
act.
Yeah.
And I look at a ceremony like this, that we're putting on a play, for lack of better, we're putting on a show. They're the stars. I'm the announcer. The wedding party is the supporting cast. The guests are their audience.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to write this play. We're going to rehearse it. And then we're going to perform it in front of everybody. And at the end, everybody will clap. And then you go to your wrap party.
Yeah.
Right. That's essentially what we're doing. We're writing a 15, 20, 25-minute play that we're going to perform in front of people.
You started your business 25 years ago?
Almost 21 years.
21 years ago. Okay. So when you first started, what were some of the rookie errors you were making that you look back on now and you're like, okay, this is why I'm great now?
Second wedding I ever did. There, ladies and gentlemen, please rise. And I forgot to tell them to sit.
That's common.
And I'm thinking, well, that's really nice that they're standing for this couple the whole time. And then I realized, oh, I'm supposed to tell them.
That's funny.
Mispronouncing names, I had one the other day where all the paperwork, it said her name was like Michelle. But she went by Michaela. And it was nowhere in the notes. And in any of the notes I had talked to this couple.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, I'm Michelle. He looks at me and I'm looking at my notes. I'm like, where the heck did this disconnect come from? So they apologized to me afterwards. They're like, oh my God, I forgot to tell you she goes by Michaela. I'm like, how did this not come up in any of our discussion when I was calling you Michelle 13, 14 times during our conversation? Here's the hack to fix that. Sometimes I realize I forgot to write the couple's name on the top.
Yeah.
Right. So I say to them, okay, it's time for the vows. All right, you repeat after me. Do you remember your name? Bob. Take you. Do you remember her name?
That's
Cindy.
Funny. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to be able to pivot with the moment, right?
I mean, yeah. And you have to be able to be in the moment. You can't ignore external things. Like, perfect example. I'm doing a wedding and it's in this beautiful courtyard, but behind the courtyard is an alley and it's trash day. So in the middle of the ceremony, a trash truck boop, boop, backs into this alley and you can hear it. It's just echoing. And so I have 2 choices. I can ignore it and just have people at the end say, oh my God, a trash truck backed in and ruined the ceremony. Or I can make it part of the ceremony. Of course, I made it part of the ceremony. So I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, the beeping sound you hear is a symbol never to back away from your problems. All right. It grabbed the trash can and dumped it out to get rid of the things in your life that no longer mean anything to you. And then it puts it out and
people must have gone crazy.
And go forward together with an empty container ready to fill it with your love.
That's great. That's
right?
great.
and the thing is, it's
That's
moments like that which differentiate a professional from somebody who doesn't know what they're doing.
Well, it also differentiates a professional who can think on their feet. You have a performing arts background, and so as part of that, you've trained yourself how to speak. But do you practice your scripts beforehand? I mean, do you actually mouth the words and say it out loud, or are you able to just go there and just riff it?
I've been doing this long enough. I only write the ceremonies the morning of the ceremony or the night before. So I'm like one of those guys in school who didn't study for the test until the morning.
Yeah.
Of the test and then ace the test that afternoon.
Yeah. I mean, I think you get to a certain point with certain skills. Like, as a musician, I can sit in with things that I haven't practiced before, but I have to practice it. I have to do it, and because I haven't done it enough, and I've also gotten hit in the head enough times to where
Yeah, now for people who don't have that skill,
yeah,
a PDR, practice, drill, rehearse, practice, drill, rehearse.
Right, and do it out loud. So tell me about
But to go back to that, that's an important aspect. Is not just saying the words, and this is where it comes to practice, drill, rehearse.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. is knowing when to put in those pauses.
Yeah.
You know, like in an opening statement, you know, we're gathered here today to celebrate one of life's greatest moments, the joining of your two hearts. Or you can say, we're gathered here today to celebrate the joining of two hearts. There's a big difference. Understanding that difference and that nuance.
And there's speed. You know, I talk about there's the pause. There's also the speeding up and slowing down as you get into something exciting, as you're rattling off things that they're doing. But you can nail those things in a sequence deliberately fast, and then when you get to the sensitive parts, then you slow it down. Right? It's not necessarily volume. When you talk about something sensitive, your voice doesn't need to be up here. Right? It can be down here and still be the same volume.
But it's also necessary to also look at the emotions of the couple. Because if all of a sudden, you know, the bride starts, you know, sniffling and sniveling, there's a way to actually evoke that emotion even more. If I see the bride is about to lose it, I want to take her down that road.
Yes.
So I slow down my voice, and I, you know, like I'm about to cry, and it just pulls it out of them, and all of a sudden their emotions get stronger.
Yeah.
And knowing how to pull that out, and knowing the tonality at that moment to pull that emotion, right out of the bride or the groom, that's a trick.
I say this every podcast: we want them to cry.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We want them to cry. We don't want them to necessarily ruin their makeup, but we want them to show that emotion. We want that stuff to come out.
And that can be done. That can be elicited. By the person performing the ceremony. The way they say it.
As the head of a company of officiants, you probably don't see a lot of bad ceremonies because you're busy conducting good ones. But what are some of the things that you've seen along the way? Are there any stories about, you know, the drunk uncle, or I mean, maybe you've stayed for the wedding and you see them in the speech section, which we can get to, but are there things that you've seen in ceremonies that have gone badly and you're just like, oh boy?
Oh yeah. The drunk uncle is the typical one. They wanted their uncle to come up to say a prayer because he was the religious uncle, but uncle had been drinking, so he starts in this prayer. And he finishes the prayer and he just keeps going on and on and on. And the couple's looking at me like, help, get him off the stage. And I put my hand on his shoulder and he kind of shrugs it off. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to get this guy off the stage? So I find a little moment in a pause. I'm like, great, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for you know, the uncle here for giving a good speech. And I kind of actually physically push him away, because he wasn't going to leave the stage. And then I had another one. It was a Persian ceremony where they just wanted him to come up and explain what the sofré was. In a Persian ceremony, there's a table where there's all these sweets and fruits, and each one has a different meaning, and he was there to explain it. He explains it, and then he goes, and I now pronounce you husband and wife. And the couple looks at me, and they look at him, they go, no, you don't. Sit down. You got to make sure that people who you are bringing up understand their limitations and
their role,
and their role. And when the minister tells you to sit down, get the heck off the stage.
And the importance of that to the timing of everything else, right? I mean, tell couples all the time, you have to be very clear with your wedding party speakers when we're looking at the reception stuff, particularly. You have to be very clear that 3 to 4 minutes means 3 to 4 minutes. Right? It doesn't mean 10, and it can't mean 10, and because people are like, okay, whatever, you know, what am I gonna, you know, an extra 3 minutes, right? But suddenly everybody does that, and now you're at 12 if you're lucky, if you're really lucky, and now the food's been sitting there for 12 minutes.
I say the same thing with the couple's vows. Are like, how long should we make them? My personal thing is I tell them 3 paragraphs. Mm-hmm. Tell your origin story, your life together, and your future plans. And try to keep that to 2 minutes, because I've seen the people who have just had reams of pages and pages, and after a while you see the guests smiley, and then you see their faces kind of flatten out, and then you see their faces kind of turn to frowns, and it's like, Oh my God, your vows are way too long.
Yeah, we say 1 to 2 minutes. One of the things I found working with them on their vows is they tend to fall in two camps. There's the camp that doesn't really want to do this. Like they want to do it emotionally, but they hate the idea of doing it because they have public speaking anxiety, especially for something like this.
Fear.
Right? And so they want it to be as short as possible. And then there's the other side that wants to tell the whole story. And there's often a battle in between the two. Ironically, one of the longest ones that I fought and fought but couldn't get her to knock it back sufficiently happened to be a luxury wedding planner. And it was just one of those that was just like, it was like 7 minutes long. It was horrendously long. She decided she wanted it to be mystical. That's, different, and that's fine. It's your wedding. It's always your wedding. But
right,
it's your show. Yeah.
That's fine. I'm here to give you advice.
Right.
I'm here to guide you along the way. And if you want to utilize that information I'm giving you, great. If you choose to do something else, then you have to suffer the consequences. Like a ring bearer under 10 holding rings. You don't do it. There's certain things that you just don't do. And when it does go sideways, and it usually does, I tell them, I'm going to tell you I told you so when it screws up. And I tell them I told you so. Now, I had, speaking of vows, I had the most amazing ones the other day. This groom, in our meeting says, our origin story was really boring. So I'm going to write an alternate origin story. And so he wrote it out, he sent it to me, and I'm having to read this. So it starts off, he was in this udon restaurant. And in the udon restaurant, he sees this beautiful girl, but he's too shy to go up and say anything to her. So he's just watching her stand in line waiting for her udon. When all of a sudden, and again, I tell everybody right at this point, this is a true story, everybody. This is an absolute true story. Then all of a sudden,
not a word of it's true, right? Right. Yeah.
Aliens from another planet just land their spaceship right outside the restaurant because the restaurant had a 5-star Yelp review. And they kicked through the doors and they went up to the front of the line in front of everybody to order their udon. He was so incensed by this that he got up and used all his strength and did a roundhouse kick and kicked them, and they went flying out of the restaurant. And she was so thankful because she finally retained her space in line, and then she went and sat down with them, and that's how they met.
It's amazing.
Now, it killed.
Yeah.
The way it was written, and of course I emphasized different spots of it. Practice, drilled, rehearsed on that one because it had special nuances within it.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and it was crazy, and it was interesting.
And I think that's whether you hire a professional or you hire a professional to help your friend or family member, what you're getting there, a lot of it is the creativity that comes out of the interview process, right? You ask the right questions in the interview, you find the hooks, much like a reporter would or a story writer would. You find those moments that aren't always obvious to the couple. They're not always things that traditionally would be things that you'd ask or things that you'd think about in a ceremony. But then someone like you or me will see it and go, all right, that's something interesting. That's fun. Yeah, we can make something out of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Like my couple the other day, he loved Rick and Morty and she loved Harry Potter. So I found some Rick and Morty love quotes and I found some Harry Potter love quotes and sprinkled them into the ceremony.
Yeah.
They loved it. They weren't expecting Rick and Morty to be at their wedding, but they'd emphasize, oh my God, yeah, it's my favorite show. And I'm like, then I have to put Rick and Morty in there.
Do you typically show up, you do the ceremony, and then you're out, right? You're not sticking for the wedding for the most part?
Usually after the ceremony, I wait around for people to tell me how amazing I was.
Yeah, you need that.
Because I never hear it enough.
Yeah, it's always, it's great. I mean, that's the fun part of doing it, right?
Yeah, well, I'm again, it goes back to it. I'm a performer.
Yeah.
A lot of people who I have working for me have performance backgrounds.
Yeah, we need the love.
Yeah, that's what makes the difference. If you approach it, again, as a performance, rather than just the reading of some words or a clerical or a clerical moment, then that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, yeah. To the extent that you either go to weddings or stick around for the weddings. Maybe it's a destination or something that you've done. What have you seen on the speeches side that has stuck out?
There's a scene in what is it, Wedding Crashers. All right, that always sticks out to me. The one girl is struggling doing her speech, and Vince Vaughn is in the back, or I forgot if it was Vince Vaughn or the other, and he's like pounding his heart. It's like, from the heart. Say it from the heart. And that's what makes the difference, rather than just some terrible stories. Definitely don't throw embarrassing stories in there, like, the groom was with 16 women. But do it from the heart. That's what I say when you're doing a speech.
I don't know if I told you the story the other day, but after you hear this podcast, go to the previous one where Melanie Less tells a story about how the father of the bride talked about taking his son to a house of ill repute in Brazil where they shared a woman, right? And told this story. It wasn't part of the bachelor party. It was just a historical story about bonding with a father and a son. But yeah, that's one that destroyed the wedding.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Up there with the best of the stories I think I've heard.
And you kind of want to keep, certain things.
Yeah, don't tell
in the past. Yes.
It's not.
You don't want to bring up encounters.
Yeah.
Though the best one is, we did this at a wedding once, and I usually say, if there's anyone here who has just cause why this couple should not be united, I go jump off the cliff. But in this one, I go, because we had this all set up, I go, speak now or forever hold your peace. And all of a sudden, this one woman stands up. Yeah, I slept with the groom. And then another woman said, I slept with the groom. Well, no, I slept. Then this 80-year-old woman stands up. I slept with the groom. And then a guy stands up. I slept with the groom. And there was all these people positioned through the audience who had their little joke to say.
That's funny. What were you doing before this?
I was a male exotic dancer. No.
Yes. Well, I mean, I just look at you and tell you.
I've been an entertainer for most of my life, and been in sales and marketing. And so I wanted to figure out a way that I could put both of them together. A friend of mine was getting married, and this is what I always suggest people not do. And they asked me to perform the ceremony because I'm the entertainer of all the group, and I'm the only one who has performance skills. And at the end of the ceremony, every single person came up to me, goes, Alan, quit your jobs. This is what you should be doing for your lifetime. And so I put up a website, and I started getting bookings and more bookings and more bookings because of the way that I approached weddings. It was different, it was fresh, and people were gravitated toward that. And I got to the point where I couldn't handle it, so I started adding people and adding people and adding people and adding people to now I'm at 39 officiants on my team of all different types.
What is the common thing that you have with all 39 of those people?
We love being up in front of people. We love being able to create a vision for somebody. And as any actor, we love the appreciation at the end.
Mm-hmm.
When people tell us, oh my God, that was amazing.
Yeah.
That is the greatest feeling.
Yeah.
That's why performers perform. When you're up there performing, it is the highest high you can have. There is no drug that matches that feeling when you're up there performing, killing it, and then getting that adulation afterwards.
Yeah.
There's nothing that beats it. And that's why performers do what they do.
If you're thinking, let's say outside of this market, if you're thinking about becoming an officiant, if you're in New York, let's say, and you're thinking about becoming an officiant, what are some of the things, whether it's technical, in terms of how you actually deliver it, like what are some of the things that you would advise people to really focus on besides the interview, besides the actual performance of it? What are the other
I would say the legal parts of owning a business are tremendous. Making sure you have your DBA or your LLC in place. Make sure you set up your company the right way so you don't get killed on taxes or audits or things like that. Make sure you set it up as a real business and not just Joe Schmo, I do weddings, Joe Schmo weddings. You have to do all the background because every state, every area has different legal rules. Like my wife and I are going to North Carolina to do a wedding, but North Carolina doesn't recognize online ordination.
Right.
So the couple actually has to get legally married before we go back there and do their wedding. So understanding the local rules,
Yeah.
like even in states like
You can perform it, but it's not legal unless they
yeah,
do it in a courthouse or a religious institution somewhere.
I can't go to Las Vegas and
Right.
do a wedding
Right.
because you actually have to get approved by the county or whatever beforehand and get a permit to do weddings, and then you can sign the marriage license. Otherwise, it's invalid. So understanding the legal aspects of what makes a legal ceremony.
Yeah. Sometimes most states you have to actually have them say "I do,"
And that can be the only
Yeah.
ceremony. I've had couples sitting at my desk. Do you? Yeah. Do you? Yeah. All right, you're married.
Yeah.
That's the simplest part of it. The other part is understanding how to fill out a marriage license, sign the marriage license.
Mm.
Because if the marriage license is signed wrong, I did that in the first wedding I performed. I signed it wrong. And it got kicked back from the county, and we sent it back. It got kicked back again. They didn't have their legal documents for 8 months
Yeah.
because I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So making sure you understand, use a black pen, stay inside the lines,
Yeah.
make sure everything's readable,
Yeah.
make sure you know what's supposed to go in each box. And again, like here in LA, if you make one little error outside the box, they're kicking your marriage license.
When you do a ceremony, you don't show it to them ahead of time, right? This is the first time they hear it is when they're there, right?
Right. I'll give them an outline.
An outline,
You're going to do
but yeah.
opening comments, vows,
Right.
rings.
But do they have, like, is there any? I mean, obviously you're a professional, and you know what not to say, but some people don't, right? Even as ceremony officiants, they will, especially the friends and family members, they will make mistakes and perhaps include things that are embarrassing or things that they didn't know or whatever, in the interview, right? Do you imagine there's like any kind of potential liability for an officiant to say the wrong thing, or is I mean, I know in part of our contracts it's like we're not responsible. You're saying you're the one making the decision here.
We have it in our contract, that hey, if you don't like it, we'll give you your money back, basically.
Yeah.
But hey, it's happened. It's happened recently. I had a couple who I didn't read properly. 1 in 500 couples I won't read properly. And they filled out a questionnaire, and in the questionnaire they listed a bunch of things. So I put that in. They're like, "Oh, we didn't want you to put that in there." I'm like, "Well, it says at the top of the questionnaire, don't answer questions that you don't want me to put in there."
Yeah.
"Oh, but we didn't think you would put it in there." I'm like, "But you put it in there. I thought that was a exciting moment for you."
Yeah.
So make sure that you're clear with things that you want and things that you don't want.
Yeah.
Like I had one couple, they met online, but they go, "Don't tell anybody that we met online. Our parents don't know." And that's what the feature was. "Oh, I didn't want anybody to know that we met online." And I go, "But you put it in there." So, and it embarrassed us in front of our parents because we told them that we met at school.
I often tell my couples when we're talking about their wedding party speakers, if you think that they have the potential of saying something embarrassing, they don't have the knowledge. It's kind of like the John Cleese's version of the Dunning-Kruger thing. Like in order for you to know how bad you are at something, you have to have the capacity to understand that, right? And so if someone's already embarrassing in general, they probably won't know what's embarrassing to you. And so you better be clear about what they can't say, right?
Yeah, and you also have to be able to read your audience.
Right.
That's in any public display of anything, being able to read your audience. If you look at the audience and it's a bunch of really religious people and you start telling sex jokes, that's not going to go over well. If it's all grandmas and grandpas and
yeah, the kind of humor that you might do with your friends or family in closed doors with 10 people is different than the kind of humor you're going to want when you have extended family and or work friends or people that were invited because they're just important in your life for some other reason, right? It's a different kind of humor that you want to do in front of those types of people. It's not a comedy show that they've elected to go to. It's something that it's a wedding that they wound up at, you know. So
Yeah, and it's just, it's just observe your surroundings.
right.
Observe the makeup of the people you're speaking to. And that's with any group. I mean, I've spoken all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one thing is I have to be able to gear my audience. If I'm speaking to officiants as opposed to, wedding planners, my speeches will be different.
Sure.
If you're speaking in front of, a bunch of conservative people, you need to be a little more conservative.
And that's where the practice or the innate skill set comes in, because if you're face down into your copy, because you haven't become fluent with it enough to be able to make eye contact with your audience and actually be able to look at people, then you're going to miss it, right? And so having that fluency one way or the other, however you get there, that will allow you to look out in the crowd and use the sheet as a reference, but not have to be buried in it, then that's where you get there.
Well, it's like in auditioning for movie and TV and commercial roles, is you have to be ready for a cold read, which means a cold read when you're doing an audition is you look at the page for a second, you memorize it, and then look up and say the words. So, and just being able to glance down at your page and then memorize the next sentence and emote that to people, that's a skill. Mm-hmm. That's a skill rather than just face down. And it's so funny. I don't know if you've ever seen me do a wedding, but I'm out of my book 90% of the time. And for some reason, the only pictures that the photographers get are when I'm looking at my book. Like, I'm never looking at my book. How do you get the 3 seconds in the ceremony that I'm looking at my book? And that's when you snap the picture. And that's also another important thing is when you're doing a ceremony, is not just be cognizant of the words, but the cognizant of the positioning of your couple. So if all of a sudden the couple is standing in a shade or a half shade and there's a big stripe of light going down one side of the face, a professional knows when to tell them, hey, take a step toward me, or take a step backwards, or take a step toward each other to get out of that weird light. Also positioning them dead center in that aisle or dead center between the arch.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, if you don't, all the pictures and everything will be of you guys hugging the left side of the arch, and it looks really awkward.
Right. Or too far from each other, where it looks like there's, there's 3-4 feet between, each side of and the center. Like it looks like you're on two different ceremonies, right?
And the most important thing for any officiant, whether it's the first time you've done it, when it's time for the kiss, get the hell out of that shot. Start moving away. By the power vested in me, by the time you get to me, you're on the other side of the room watching that kiss happen.
Yeah.
You do not want to be anywhere in that picture. All my officiants know that if I ever catch them in a picture where the couple is kissing and their mug is right there in the middle of the shot, they are fired. All their weddings are taken away and they'll be blackballed in the industry.
Does that require, and just from a technical standpoint, grab the mic out of the mic stand and then move? Like as you're the power vested in me,
a professional officiant shouldn't need a mic stand.
Okay, this is again, things that a professional would know. But if you're one of those people that is doing a ceremony, or you've already asked your friend or family member to do it, this is a minor thing that isn't minor when it comes up to the photo that you've hired the person to get.
Right. But if you are using a mic stand, as you are walking out of that shot, grab the microphone stand and pull it aside as well. So
good point. Yeah.
And again, that's sensing your surroundings. If you grab that microphone stand and it only has a 1-foot cord, and all of a sudden, it's gone, and then it's awkward because it'll fall out of the stand, whatever. Just be cognizant. Practice that before you do it as well. One time I was stepping out of the shot. I was going around the back side of the arch to get out of the shot because there wasn't any room in front, and my jacket catches this like stick out on the arch, and I get stuck on the arch. So the whole arch is shaking, the couple's kissing, and I'm like back and forth trying to get off in the arch, and it's more humorous than anything, but I was appalled. You know,
At least
like,
you didn't.
oh
At least you didn't take down the arch with you, right?
oh, I know.
That would have been something. Are there photos of you stuck on the arch? There's got to be something, no?
There's probably.
I'd love to see it. But it's funny. Alan, thank you very much. I appreciate your time today. How can people find you?
On my website, greatofficiants.com, or on all social media at Great Officiants.
Highly recommend that you check that out. If you, what's the geography that you work in generally, or that you prefer?
Mainly we work Santa Barbara to San Diego, but we travel all over the world.
Great.
So, I mean, like I say, we got one later this year, and another state. So, yeah, we're having a good
So if
time.
you're interested, check them out. If you're in the area, check them out, and especially. And otherwise, thank you, Alan, for your time and all the information. It's great stuff.
All right, thank you, man. Cheers.
If you need help with your vows, your wedding speech, or your ceremony script, you want to make it personal, you need some help practicing it, visit vowsandspeeches.com. That's VOWSAND speeches.com. You can reach out to me there. You can send me an email at Brian, BRIAN, at vowsandspeeches.com. But I'd love to help you.